Henry and the Honeybees. It had rather crept up on Henry. When the dragonflies were hovering, he became mesmerised by their gossamer wings and the flashes of colour that dazzled his eyes. Then the trilling of the chipping sparrows entranced him into a dreamy state, from which he might be awoken only by the winds playing their panpipes across the forest canopy. The problem arose because so much of Henry's time was spent enjoying the wonderful world around him. Not that that was a bad thing in itself. Quite the contrary. It was one of Henry's endearing features. However, too much of almost anything can become a bad thing, and Henry had become rather unfit and rather too lazy. The day before, Beetle had asked him to push a log, and by the end of just a few pushes, he was gasping for breath. Even shuffling home had become something of an ordeal over the many molehills. If it was a choice between an hour's walk or an hour's snooze, it was the snooze that won every time. That afternoon, after a particularly long daydream, fascinated by the bumblebees nectar hopping across the blossoms, a thought slowly developed inside his mind, like the honey inside a hive. Something delicious came of hard work, activity, and exercise. You could make the liquid gold of honey out of flowers. You could bring happiness to others by playing your part and working hard. The next day, Robin was startled when he saw Henry up bright and early, swimming across the willow pond. At midday, Swan watched Henry walking briskly up and down Rocky Edge. In the evening, Fox noticed Henry lifting conker weights. Whispers filled the woodland about Henry's new antics, and the animals watched the weeks begin to transform Henry from being a breathless snoozer into being alert, strong, and agile. The following month, as Henry was jogging through the daisy meadows, he noticed a baby rabbit, injured and desperate for water. The sun was high and hot, and the air was like a furnace. Henry had heard that baby rabbit had been snatched during the night, and Mother Rabbit was inconsolable, sobbing and crying out. Henry knew that there wasn't time to fetch help. He was the bunny's last chance of survival. Henry sunk down onto the burning ground, helpless. His first thought was that there was no way he could carry the baby and make it back to her burrow. He was just too unfit. A bee buzzed past his ear, and suddenly the past weeks flashed before him. He wasn't that snoozy daydreamer any more. He was a new, revitalized hedgehog. with great care, but also urgency, he lifted Baby Rabbit into his arms and began the long journey back to Mother Rabbit. Halfway there, as sweat began to sting his eyes and his legs were feeling sore and numb, he doubted himself and thought, I just can't do this. The sound of another bee broke the spell of these give-up thoughts, and he pressed on over Poppy Hill and through Cow Parsley Vale. When he arrived at the burrow, he placed Baby Rabbit tenderly on some soft green moss. Then, having no strength for words, he just collapsed, an exhausted bundle of mighty hedgehog. Around him, a commotion broke out. Mother Rabbit was screaming and squealing with shock, surprise, happiness, delight, and worry, all at the same time, at the sight of her injured baby, as she lovingly gave him her milk. Thankfully, his injuries were only minor. Water was fetched for Henry, who, having drunk deeply, fell into a deep sleep. As the news spread, the burrow became surrounded by the forest animals, all in awe of his amazing rescue. It was the sound of buzzing, though, that awoke him. The bunny rabbits had collected buttercups and daisies and placed them on the ends of all of Henry's prickles as a garland for a hero. The buzzy bees were collecting nectar from the garland, and out of respect for Henry, they each flew in a heart shape before returning to their hive. Oh, it was a wonderful afternoon, in which everyone celebrated, laughing and dancing the hours away. On his way home, Henry visited the hive to offer his thanks. Thank you, my beautiful, inspiring, buzzy bee friends. Without you, I could never have saved Baby Rabbit. I would never have been as fit as I have become. And without you, this day wouldn't have become as delicious as honey.